Okay, so you might be saying, Joe, what's going on? Why are the colors different? And they're changing. Why are you doing this? First of all, because I can. Second of all, because I wanted to experiment, okay? And thirdly, because it's cool. It's cool. I have these lights and they can change color. I just think it's cool. And if you think about it, the changing lights, the changing colors, it represents Shinsu. That's what we're going with. Shinsu is the magic system of Tower of God. Whenever you talk about an anime or a comic or any fantasy-esque story, there's always, or usually, a magic system. So sometimes it stands for JoJo or whatever, right? For Tower of God, it's Shinsu. It is essentially the substance that these characters use to grow, to get more powerful, to use skills and attacks, and it makes them stand out. Shinsu is really cool. The great thing about it is it's completely up to the author how he wants to use this. You know, Shinsu can be essentially anything, which is why it's a really cool magic system. There's not that many limitations, although there are some. So today, I thought it'd be fun to break it down. You know, there's actually a lot of information that we have about Shinsu. It's a very mysterious substance, but there is a lot of info out there. So today, we're gonna break down Shinsu. What is it made of? What even is it? Any thoughts or whatever on this mysterious substance? So let's get into it. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, we're so close to 40,000. We're like right there. We're right on the edge, and you could actually make the difference in hitting 40,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, consider doing so. We make a lot of Tower of God content here, just like this. I don't know why I'm talking like this, but if you did, I'd really appreciate it. Shinsu is a water-like substance that is produced by the tower that can be found on each of the floors as far as we know. It's essentially air, or water, or fire, or electricity, or whatever the user wants it to be. However, the user doesn't create Shinsu. The user doesn't summon Shinsu, right? Shinsu is everywhere, and the user can manipulate it to become what they desire. Now, obviously, some people are better with Shinsu. Wave controllers especially are gifted with Shinsu. However, all positions, all people in this tower use Shinsu. Everybody has to use it to some extent. For example, if you're a fisherman, you use body reinforcement to make yourself stronger. So when Quant was fighting him in Season 1, he wasn't exactly allowed to reinforce his body, or he wasn't exactly allowed to use a lot of Shinsu, but he did reinforce his body with the little that he was given. So that's just an example. Shinsu is everywhere, and it is up to you to control it. Because of this, that is why the Floor of Death, the 43rd floor, is the only known area in the tower where the Shinsu is just, it's not controlled by a guardian. So that's the next thing, right? Shinsu is only allowed to be used by the user if you have a contract with the Guardian. This confuses some people, but it's pretty easy actually. Essentially, all you have to do is be like, hey Guardian, I want to make a contract. And the Guardian's like, okay, you're allowed to use Shinsu now. It's as simple as that. I know it can seem confusing, especially with the different translations and everything, but that's all it is. So that's what we see Bomb do in Season 1 on the 2nd floor. He makes a contract with the administrator. However, irregulars do not have to make that contract. So Bomb didn't actually have to do that, because in the Crown game, he did use some Shinsu without even realizing he was protecting Rachel, right? And that's why Livero was so stunned. It was like, what the heck just happened, you know? Irregulars are sort of the exception to that rule, which isn't surprising because irregulars are basically exceptions to all the rules. So Shinsu is air. It's water, it's light even. Like everything that's around you in the tower is Shinsu. Now it is different from air, right? Air cannot be liquefied, but Shinsu is. Shinsu really is just a liquid. In lower densities, like regularly, it's a gas. It's just everywhere and you can manipulate it. But in higher densities, it's water. Pretty much straight up, it's a liquid. It's not actually water. It's called divine water, which is what Shinsu translates to. It's just a divine liquid that can be turned into blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like energy, right? It's basically energy, and that's why all the beings in the tower have to be able to use it to ascend and survive in this place. Through Shinsu, you can pretty much, again, do anything. Now, this is where it's like, there's no real science behind it as far as we know. It's just this tower substance. It only exists in the tower as far as we know, and it's pretty much energy, and so you can use it to create an attack, or you can use it to become immortal. Like literally, you can use it to stop aging. Like, there are infinite possibilities with Shinsu. Because of how necessary it is to control Shinsu, if you don't have an affinity for it, you pretty much are guaranteed to not become a ranker. Every single ranker, and especially high rankers, have a great amount of control over Shinsu, not just techniques, but also, again, body reinforcement and all these other things. It's extremely essential when climbing the tower and being a ranker. So that's why on the second floor, Ro used the Shinsu wall, which was made of water, by the way, in its purest form. That's essentially what it looks like, to weed out the regulars and see which ones were allowed, which ones weren't, because like he said, if you weren't allowed to pass that wall, you're not climbing the tower, like you're just not gonna make it. Which is why the anime messed up, because Levin was able to pass through the barrier in the webtoon, but in the anime he couldn't, which is absolute BS, okay? Levin, dude, we're gonna keep reading the webcomic, Levin's gonna be a high ranker, dude. If freaking Lafab can be a high ranker with her sniper, you know, dude. Levin got so freaking, hashtag justice for Levin. He deserved better. So yeah, Shinsu Resistance is kind of like its own thing, even if you're not particularly gifted at using body reinforcement and using Shinsu attacks, you can still have a high level of Shinsu Resistance. Yuri has a lot of Shinsu Resistance, Rak does, because he was raised with his race in an area where Shinsu is very thick. So Shinsu Resistance is kind of like its own even skill and talent. And because Shinsu is everywhere in the tower, all inhabitants have to have some level of density because it literally is everywhere. So Shinsu in air is kind of like a common correlation because it does seem like in its gas form that Shinsu is pretty much air. It allows the inhabitants to breathe in the tower. There's some scenes in Tower of God where they suck out all the Shinsu and they can't breathe, right? It's pretty much air and water, etc. But it is different from air, you know? Air has a sort of natural law, the way that it operates and moves, but Shinsu is different on every single floor. You know, the Guardian pretty much dictates how that works, which is why on the Floor of Death, it's so weird and crazy, and pretty much no one can use Shinsu because there's no Guardian, like I mentioned before. So the term Shinsu manipulation refers to people who are able to use Shinsu in an external way, kind of like a physical way. So if they're able to turn it into electricity or fire or ice, that's a form of Shinsu manipulation. Even body reinforcement is a form of Shinsu manipulation. Of course, people who are born from the 10 great families have a very natural affinity towards Shinsu. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're 100% guaranteed to be perfect with it, but obviously the 10 great families, they're kind of a big deal with Shinsu. So yeah, Shinsu can be used to attack, to defend, to enhance yourself, to shoot things at people, and there's a rumor that Enryu can even use it to create life. Now, that has not been proven, that has not been shown in Tower of God to be fact, but there are some things that point towards that sort of showcase that may be true, that you can actually create life through Shinsu. This thing, it's endless possibilities. I think that's such a cool magic system because it allows SIU and us readers to imagine endless possibilities. You know, it's not like Harry Potter where it's like, oh, you have to say the spell, although they don't really do that later. It's not as there's no like limit or cap to it. There's like a bajillion different things you could do. Also, it's worth pointing out that wave controller, the term, is sometimes used to refer to Shinsu users, but it really is just a position, right? You don't have to be a wave controller to be amazing with Shinsu. It's the position that probably uses it the most in a lot of cases, but even that may not be true, right? Pretty much all fishermen use body reinforcement as they continue through the story, but wave controller is sometimes used to refer to Shinsu users. Okay, now talking about the specific terms that are associated with Shinsu, we learned these in season 1. These aren't super important. One of them is actually pretty important. It's a little confusing, but bear with me here. I'm just gonna give a very basic description of these terms. So the basic unit of Shinsu is called a bang. Or a bong, however you describe it. I call it bang. It's essentially the little, if you fire a fireball at someone, that's a bang of Shinsu, right? If you shoot one thing at somebody, that's a bang. So when Bomb or Viole fights Quattro, Quattro uses 3 fire bangs and Viole uses 5 of his bangs. Bangs are important because, first of all, it's hard to control many of them. Bomb being able to shoot 2 in season 1 was a pretty big deal. Ho was also able to create 2, but it was very weak, which actually goes into the size of the bang, which is myun, and the density of the bang, which is su. Now those two, it's a bit more confusing what the difference is. I highly recommend checking out the wiki page, but essentially, even though Ho was able to control 2, it was a lot harder for him, and he didn't have as much control over the myun and the su. But yeah, being able to control 3 bangs is a big deal for E rank regulars, and as you keep climbing the tower, it's, you're expected to be able to control more. However, Viralaine using 5 to 6 at that time was crazy. That just puts into perspective how hard it is to control that many bangs. Quattro was a big deal as an E rank regular, and he could control 3, and people were like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So it's wild. That just shows you as an irregular, Viralaine was crazy. Also, apparently SIU stated that high rankers can control between 30 and 50 bangs. That's pretty insane. And of course, Enryu is rumored to be able to control over 9,000 bangs. That's a lot of bangs. Of course, that's also a Dragon Ball reference, but I don't put it past Enryu to be able to control that many. Also, there are 2 different types of Shinsu manipulation. You can sort of categorize it into 2 different sections. There is flow control, which is the main type of Shinsu that you see everybody use, the attacks and the body reinforcement. You're controlling it externally. You're essentially continuing that flow of Shinsu, but using it and putting your own spin on it to create your element or whatever. But then there's reverse flow control, which is what Bomb uses to freeze people, and that takes the flow of Shinsu and reverses it, especially within a person, and that is why they're frozen, because again, Shinsu is essentially energy. What's really cool is you can actually combine the 2 to create techniques. The floral butterfly piercing technique is an example where you're using flow control, but also reverse flow control. That's pretty friggin' sick. And then of course there is Shinsu quality, which is essentially what kind of Shinsu you yourself have an affinity towards, whether it be ice or fire or electricity or rocks. Some people are generally better at creating certain kinds, and their own body or whatever is just better able to connect with a certain quality. For example, Kun's quality is ice, Rax is earth or rock, more specifically a stone shield, but he's kind of different because he's a descendant of an ancient one and all that stuff, but you get the idea. Bombs is an orb, so it's not always like fire, ice, blah, blah, blah. His Shinsu quality is literally just an orb, and Dorsey is like a heart, so it's essentially just what's your Shinsu? What's your element? That's what Shinsu quality is. And you can also have multiple, because Edwan's is electricity and ice, which is pretty cool. And then there is tension, which is how much power can a single bang contain. It's important to have a bunch of them, but if you're able to have a lot of tension, that's also really important. So that's also probably a reason why Ho couldn't pass. His orbs were so small, he wasn't able to have a lot of tension. And apparently V had the greatest affinity with tension. His Shinsu tension was the best out of the 12 warriors who traveled with Jihad. So that's pretty dope. But yeah, that's about it. That's about all we know on Shinsu. Obviously, I didn't go into super duper detail with certain things like myun and su. Again, it's kind of complicated though. I recommend looking into it yourself. The wiki page is great for this. But yeah, that's most of what we know on Shinsu. Check out SIU's blog posts, check out the wiki page, reread the comic. There's all sorts of ways that you can study up more on Shinsu. There's other great videos on YouTube as well that you can check out if you just Google it or YouTube it. But that is my brief explanation of what Shinsu is capable of. Basically everything, right? And I just really love Shinsu. I think it's such a cool way to showcase powers and what the tower can do and what characters can do. I think it's super cool, so talking about it is always a lot of fun. Once again, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. I love doing these explanation slash lore slash deep dive videos, so if you want to see more just like this, definitely leave a like. There's daily uploads here on the channel, now that I'm feeling better, especially daily uploads every single day, so definitely stay tuned for more content. All right, guys, I'll see you in my next Tower of God video. Take care!